Hush! Don't let on, man. Quick, you see that fellow in the light overcoat doing up his bag? Get one of those officers to examine the brown bag by his side. Sharp.
Imagine this, a seemingly harmless box of cigars, but hidden within lies a secret that could unravel a daring smuggling scheme. What begins as a casual indulgence quickly twists into a puzzle of deception, danger, and discovery. I love this tale because it lures you in with something ordinary, then pulls you deeper into a web of intrigue where every detail matters. It's clever, unsettling, and makes you wonder what else might be concealed in plain sight. Stay curious, keep listening, and let the mystery unfold. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps the stories coming.
Victor Whitechurch. Thrilling Stories of the Railway. Story 1. Peter Crane's Cigars.
A slight, delicate-looking man, with pale face and refined features, light red hair and dreamy blue eyes. Such is a brief description of Thorpe Hazel, book collector and railway enthusiast, a gentleman of independent means whose knowledge of book editions and bindings was only equalled by his grasp of railway details. At least 2 railway companies habitually sought his expert advice in the bewildering task of altering their timetables, while from time to time he was consulted in cases where his special railway knowledge proved of immense service. And his private notebook of such cases would have provided much interesting copy to publishers. He had one other peculiarity. He was a strong faddist on food and physical culture. He carried vegetarianism to an extreme and was continually practicing various exercises of the strangest description, much to the bewilderment of those who are not personally acquainted with his eccentricities. With this brief introduction of the man, it is proposed to set forth for the first time a selection of railway cases in which he played a more or less prominent part.
I tell you, I only paid 5 pence each for them. Harry Brett took the cigar from his customer's hand, looked critically at it, smelled it, and then shook his head decidedly. "Can't be done," he said. "Must be a fake. Unroll it. You're welcome." The young tobacconist broke the cigar in half, rubbed the leaves between his palms, and examined them carefully. "Yes," he admitted. "It's right enough. Same leaf all through." "What did I tell you?" Harry Brett turned round, reached for a box on a shelf, took it down, and selected a cigar which he compared with the fragments lying on his counter. "Same brand," he said at length, "but I can't make it out at all. Now, I can't afford to sell these under 6 pence each, or 7 pence from a broken box, and even then the profit's a mere nothing. You must have got these over the water, Mr. Wilson." "No, I didn't." "You couldn't have bought them retail at the price." "I did, though." "What, at a shop?" "Yes." "Where?" "In this town." "In Netherton?" "Exactly." "By George! Who was it, Mr. Wilson?"
Well, at Crane's, if you want to know. There's no secret about it. Harry Brett brought down his fist on the counter with a bang that made the scales rattle. The mention of Crane's name had evidently upset him. "It's all very well," he said, "but I tell you it can't be done.
Either Crane's a bigger fool than I took him for, or he means having you in the end and is only running this sort of thing to advertise his business. Why, he hardly knows anything about the trade. He's only been in it 6 months. You're welcome to buy them, Mr. Wilson, of course. I can't do them at the price. Well, I'm a bit of a judge of a weed, and if he begins palming off inferior stuff, he won't impose on me. But till then, I'll save my money and deal with him. But as he makes no reduction in other goods, I'll take a tint of my usual mixture from you." "Oh, go and get your baccy where you buy your cigars," exclaimed Harry Brett, who had been working himself up into quite a rage. "I don't hold with all this underselling business, nor with those who encourage it. Good morning, sir." Mr. Wilson smiled slightly at the young man's outburst of passion, shrugged his shoulders, and walked out of the shop. Harry Brett leant on the counter with his elbows, gazing angrily at the fragments of the object which had upset him so much. He had been a tobacconist from his boyhood upwards, having begun to work in his father's shop ever since leaving school, and since his father's death 3 years previously, he had come into the business. It was not a very large one, but it was well established and had many old customers, and Harry himself had been calculating for some little time that there was profit enough out of the shop to support 2, besides which he had a very distinct notion of the choice of a partner.
But for the last 3 months, certain things had troubled him. His takings had grown distinctly less, and certain customers had become irregular. And it was a curious coincidence that these troubles had begun to date from the time when Peter Crane had opened a rival business in Netherton, with an announcement that during the first week he would give away a tip-top cigar with every quarter of a pound of tobacco purchased. It was galling, inasmuch as this Peter Crane had nothing to recommend him. Netherton knew him as a ne'er-do-well, turning up every now and again at his widowed mother's, who kept a small confectionery shop in the town. He had cleared one window of this shop of its contents, and substituted the fragrant weed in its various forms, and as often as not his mother dispensed these goods, for there were intervals during which Peter Crane himself seemed to abandon his new trade. "Well, Brett," said a quiet voice suddenly, "you seem wrapped in thought. What is puzzling you? Half a minute, please, before you answer. It is time for my midday exercise." Brett looked up at Thorpe Hazel, who had entered without noise, and now stood before him, twirling his arms rapidly round his head, and then suddenly thrusting them out in front. Hazel lived at Netherton, but had a little bachelor flat in town, where he spent a good deal of his time. He was a regular customer of Brett, who knew his little eccentricity. When he had finished, Brett told him about the cigar and his suspicions. Hazel leant on the counter and listened attentively.
"I know this young Crane," he remarked, "and I'm afraid he doesn't bear the best of characters. Of course, this affects your trade." "It does, sir, to a certain extent. Do you suspect anything?" "Well, sir, I hardly like to say. This particular brand of cigar can be picked up very cheaply in Holland or Belgium, and if they could be got over without the duty, I could understand it." "You think it's a question for the revenue officials?" "Oh, I'm not going to put them on his track," said Brett scornfully. "There's honour in trade as in other things. Besides which, if there were nothing in it, I should pose as a spiteful sort of chap, and it would be all the worse for me." "I see. You've excited my curiosity, Brett. Well, I want some cigarettes of the usual brand. Thank you. If you hear anything about Crane's movements, you might let me know. And by the way, don't talk about the thing. Good morning." On his way home, he called in at Crane's shop. Here he made a trifling purchase. Mrs. Crane served him.
he muttered to himself as he regained the street. That collarette of hers was genuine Brussels lace. I wonder whether Brett's suspicions are correct. It may be a case worth investigating.
Netherton was about 25 miles from London on the Mid-Southern and Eastern Railway, and Thorpe Hazel constantly ran up to town. On this particular evening, he was due at a meeting at Kensington. He had scarcely taken his seat in the train when a young man came in and sat opposite. Hazel glanced at him over his paper and recognized him as Peter Crane. He remembered Brett's little difficulty for a moment, but dismissed the subject as he resumed his paper. Now, when the train drew up at the London terminal of the Mid-Southern and Eastern Railway, Hazel did not hurry himself in the least. He was not due at Kensington just yet, so he determined to wait till the departure of the Continental train. There were many things to interest him: the type of engine running, the number of coaches, dozens of details that are only apparent to the enthusiast of railway matters. He was standing on the platform, taking in these various things, when he suddenly caught sight of Crane going into the Continental booking office. An impulse seized him, and a moment or two later he was standing close behind the tobacconist, overhearing him ask for a return ticket to Gantès. He began to be interested. Now, he reasoned to himself as he went out of the station and took a hansom, there's evidently a bit of clever smuggling going on here. Let's think. A return ticket. How does he get the cigars through? How does he bring them back? Seems to me there's a chance of a railway mystery here. Of course, it may be on the boat, but I shouldn't think so. I'll have a look into this. There's any amount of frontier smuggling on continental railways, I know. I once saw 1/2 weight of tobacco fixed under a passenger coach on the St. Gothard and beautifully run through Chiasso. This may be well worth investigating.
Once having made up his mind, Hazel lost no time in making further inquiries as soon as he returned to Netherton, the result being that he ascertained that Crane had a regular date in the month for absenting himself from home. And so it happened that the next time the latter took a return ticket to Gantès, Thorpe, Hazel, disguised in a black wig and looking very much like a commercial traveller, was already seated in the Continental train, booked through to the same destination. He had his eyes wide open and had already taken in the fact that Crane's luggage consisted of a fair-sized brown Gladstone and a very large black kit bag. Hazel kept well out of Crane's way all the journey, for he knew very well that it was the return trip only that demanded careful scrutiny. So he snatched what sleep he could. They reached Gantès in the small hours of the morning, and Hazel noticed that Crane put the kit bag in the cloakroom, after which he proceeded to an adjacent hotel, a porter carrying his Gladstone. Hazel, whose luggage was quite small, looked about him, noticed a hotel just opposite, rang up the sleepy night porter, and took a front room so that he could command the entrance of Crane's hotel. Instead of undressing, he opened his bag, changed into a tourist's knickerbocker suit, and then lay down on his bed with the determination not to sleep more than a couple of hours.
At daybreak he was at his window, keeping careful watch. An hour or two passed, and then his patience was rewarded. Crane came out of the hotel, smoking a cigar, and suspecting nothing. The next minute Hazel was in the street, following his prey to the station. He lounged into the booking office in time to hear Crane take a return ticket to Antwerp. Then he inquired of the booking clerk casually whether one could take a return to Antwerp and come back the next day. "No, monsieur, tickets are only available for one day." He shrugged his shoulders lazily, for he never believed in taking too much trouble over anything. It was clear that Crane would be back in Gaunt's that day. The only thing was to find out whether he took his black bag with him. He did. "Now," said Hazel to himself as he went back to his hotel, "that young man is precious shrewd. It's pretty clear he's gone over to Antwerp to get his goods. There isn't a better place in Northern Europe for getting them. Probable out of bond, too. But why does Bet take this route? It's a roundabout way to get to Antwerp. I know, he works the trick on the Mid-South and Eastern, and the other line won't do. It's well worth finding out, but I can't do anything yet."
He had his breakfast, strolled round the town, and finally came back to his room. He had jotted down the times of trains returning from Antwerp. Then he settled himself to perform a nerve-strengthening exercise, which consisted of lying down on the flat of his back and holding a tumbler of water, filled to the brim, over his head for 10 minutes at a time, the object being not to spill a drop of it. He entirely abstracted himself from the object in hand, except at such times as Antwerp trains were due, when he got up and carefully watched the street leading from the station. In the afternoon, Crane appeared once more and entered his hotel. Then Hazel paid his bill, went to the station, and waited for the train back to England. He was keen and alert now. If that black bag, which he surmised was in the cloakroom, contained cigars, he was particularly anxious to see how the customs were evaded. Exactly in accordance with his surmises, Peter Crane came down to the station in time for the afternoon boat train. And this is what he did. He took the black bag out of the cloakroom and registered it through to London. That meant that until the bag reached London, he could not possibly get at it, and then he would have to open it in the presence of the customs officials, through registered luggage being examined there and not at Dovehaven. The brown bag, which appeared to be heavy, he took in the train with him.
Thorpe Hazel began to be mystified. Assuming the bag to be filled with cigars, he could see no way in which they could be brought through free of duty. He watched the luggage being taken on the boat at Ostend, but Crane was absolutely regardless, and had thrown himself on a saloon berth and was sleeping almost immediately, his brown bag beside him. At Dovehaven, the examination of hand luggage took place, and Hazel had squeezed himself close beside Crane in order that he might see what was in the brown bag. There was nothing suspicious. It contained quite a pile of books and articles of clothing, a pink shirt being rather conspicuous. As soon as the examination was over, Crane turned to the porter who was carrying the bag. "Put that in the van," he said. "Label it for London. I shan't want it in the carriage with me." Hazel, still wondering, now went up to the guard's van and watched the luggage being put in, both of Crane's bags being among them. The guard himself was busily engaged helping the porters, as the boat was rather late, and he was anxious to get off. "Now then, sir, are you going on? Take your seat, please. Right away." A shrill whistle, a wave of the green lamp, and the train was off, the next stop being the London terminus.
"Curious," said Hazel to himself, as he took a packet of Plasmon chocolate and a flask of milk out of his bag and proceeded to dine. "Perhaps I'm wrong after all. Ah!" as a thought struck him.
Well, we'll wait till we get to town. A couple of hours later that night, the train drew up at the London terminus, having, of course, run through Netherton without a stop. Behind the long barrier stood a number of custom house officials waiting to examine the registered luggage before it was passed through. Hazel watched by the guard's van until Crane's 2 bags were deposited on the platform. Crane took charge of the brown one himself, and a porter followed him with the black one to the examination counter. Hazel stood a little behind, eagerly awaiting the result. "Anything to declare, sir? Tobacco, scent, cigars?" "No, nothing." "Open your bag, please." "Certainly." He unlocked the large black bag and threw it open. Hazel bent forward, and he caught a glimpse of a pink shirt and books. The black bag contained the identical articles that he had seen in the brown bag at Dovehaven. A solution struck him. Glancing round, he saw a platform inspector whom he knew. Rushing up to him, he exclaimed in a whisper, "Jarvis, I'm Mr. Hazel. Look here." "Law, sir, I shouldn't have known you.
Hush! Don't let on, man. Quick, you see that fellow in the light overcoat doing up his bag? Get one of those officers to examine the brown bag by his side. Sharp." The next moment Jarvis was behind the counter and had spoken a word to the official. Crane had just strapped up his bag and was moving off. Hazel had darted away. "Sir, one moment." "What is it?" "That other bag. I want to see it." "It's not registered luggage. It was examined at Dovehaven. Here's the chalk mark on it." "Never mind. Open it, please." "Oh, very well," cried Crane with a laugh, laying it down on the counter and unstrapping it. "Here you are." The official looked inside. His face burst into a smile. "All right, sir," he exclaimed. "That's soon settled." Jarvis, who was standing by, smiled too. A minute later, Hazel accosted him. "Well," he asked, "what was inside that bag?" "Nothing, sir. It was empty." "Empty, was it? Oh, please say nothing about this, Jarvis." He went into the refreshment room, ordered a cup of coffee, lit a cigarette, and sat down to think it over. For once in his life he was completely baffled. It had seemed quite simple to him as he came up in the train, and he had thought that the opening of the brown portmanteau would prove the solution of the enigma. After a while, a plan of action developed in his mind, and he went out of the refreshment room. Jarvis was still on the platform. "Jarvis," he said, "I don't want it known that I came up by the boat train tonight." "Very well, sir." Jarvis knew of more than one railway mystery in which Thorpe Hazel had been involved, and was to be trusted. "Thought you'd caught a bit of smuggling, sir?" he asked. "Oh," drawled Hazel, "I was a bit suspicious, that was all. Capital run-up tonight." "Yes, sir. Bob Nobes is a good driver." "Ah, the guard was smart with the luggage at Dovehaven." "John Crane, sir. Yes, he's one of our best guards. Runs this train in regular shifts." Hazel's eyes sparkled for a moment. "You, didn't see what became of that young man?" "Yes, sir. Got into the train on number 2 platform." "Ah, that's mine, I believe, to Netherton. Good night, Jarvis." He got into the train, a smile of satisfaction on his face. He meant to master this little mystery. A couple of days later, he was buying cigarettes. "Oh, by the way, Brett, I think I can promise you that your hated rival will shortly shut up shop." "Indeed, sir? Well, I shouldn't be sorry. I've lost half my trade in cigars." I say, Brett, there's a fellow named John Crane. Something on the line. Know him?" "Peter's cousin, sir." "I see. Well,
Keep your mouth shut, and let me know when Crane goes away from home. I think we might have quite a little bit of fun then." 3 or 4 weeks later, Thorpe Hazel received a note from Brett. In answer to it, he wrote, "Come round to my house tomorrow at about 8 p.m. Bring a greatcoat." The tobacconist duly turned up and found Hazel in his study. "Sit down, Brett. Have some toast and water. No? Well, then take one of your own cigarettes." "Thank you, sir. I ordered the dog cart for 8:30. We have quite a drive before us. That's why I mentioned your greatcoat. What are we going to do, sir? You'll see all in good time."
They were soon bowling along the high road in the opposite direction from that of London. Hazel had the reins and was not disposed to be communicative. After they had gone about 7 or 8 miles, Hazel turned down a by-road. "You know where this leads, Brett?" "Across Pinkney's Common, sir." "Exactly." Presently he said, "There are the lights of the main line signals." "Yes, sir." A couple of red lights stood out in the blackness of the sky. "And there's the level crossing?" "Yes, sir." "All right, we'll put our lamps out." He drew up to perform the operation. "Good, and now we're going to drive on the grass across the common. And don't speak above a whisper, please." They drew nearer the line. On their left, where the road crossed the railway, the bright light of the gatekeeper's box was discernible. Presently Hazel pulled up. "We'll tie the cob to this tree," he whispered. "That's right. We shan't have long to wait." "It's a lonely place," said Brett. "Quite so. We don't want to go close up to the line. This will do. It's the up train we want." Wondering what was going to happen, Brett waited. Presently Hazel said, "Here she comes. Those are her headlights. Now you watch what happens. Keep your eyes open."
A white light above a green appeared in the distance, and grew brighter every moment. Then there was a roar as the approaching express bore down upon them. The train was running on a slight embankment, and they could see along its whole length. "Look," said Brett suddenly, "one of the doors is open, in the last carriage." "Exactly. The guard's van, Brett. There he stands. Look out. Ah, there's a pretty little smuggling dodge for you." As the train swept by, they could distinctly see the guard silhouetted against the light in his van. He appeared to be leaning out of his door, holding some large and heavy object. The next moment he had dropped this onto the soft turf of the embankment. As the train rushed by the crossing, a green light appeared for a moment, held out of the guard's van, and turned towards the rear of the train. "Now," exclaimed Hazel, "we'll just wait and see what happens. First of all, we'll get as close as we can to that package. Ah, here it is. A convenient bush to hide us, too. He's coming, Brett." A man carrying a lantern came with a limping gait from the box at the level crossing. Every now and then he paused, as if looking for something. Presently he gave a grunt of satisfaction as the light fell on a package lying on the grass. He was just about to pick it up when Hazel stepped forward and said, very quietly, "How much do you get for your share in this little transaction, my man?" "Good Lord!" exclaimed the other, dropping his lantern in his fright. Hazel picked it up and turned it on him. "Ah, you've a wooden leg, I see. No use to try to run. I suppose you were to keep this little lot till Crane came for them." Don't be hard on me, sir. I don't know nothing about the contents. If you split to the company, sir, I'd lose my post." Hazel laughed. "Answer my first question, man. How much do you get out of this?"
10 bob a time," faltered the delinquent. "Poor pay for the risk. How long has Crane been running this?" "6 or 7 months, sir." "I see. Well, I'm afraid he won't find this little lot tomorrow. You can tell him when he comes for them that we've forestalled him. I should advise you to get your half-sovereign out of him before you tell him. And you can also add that if he wants to get them again, he'd better call at Somerset House. Good night. Here's your lantern. I shall lose my post, sir."
Not this time. You may think yourself lucky, though. Here, Brett, give me a hand with this parcel." They carried the bundle, which was securely corded in thick American cloth, to the trap and drove home. An hour or so later, they were sitting in Hazel's study. "I think we're entitled to one each before I send them to the customs," said Hazel, selecting a cigar. "Now, how much do you think he cleared out of this lot?" Brett looked at the 4 dozen boxes. "Well, sir, if he got them, as you say, at Antberg, I can pretty well guess the price he paid. He ought to have saved quite £25 in duty, very likely more. Altogether, the run was worth at least £50. But how did you find it out, sir?" Hazel told him of his journey to Gaunt's and of the customs examination in London. "I own I was baffled for the moment, but of course I knew that he wouldn't have taken that journey to bring back an empty bag. Inquiry confirmed my suspicions that the guard was in it, possessing a duplicate key to the black bag, and I saw where the solution was. Undoubtedly the cigars were in the country. The only question was their whereabouts.
The problem was very simple. I had only to keep a watch on Crane. He didn't notice the cyclist who followed him when he took a trap from here the next day. Nor did he see that same cyclist lying behind a bush on Pinkney's Common with a field glass watching him get a parcel from the level crossing box. The rest you know. I guessed pretty accurately where the guard dropped them, and here they are." "There's one thing I don't understand, sir," replied Brett, "and that is why the guard didn't put the cigars in the brown bag and throw that out. Or, in fact, why he took 2 bags at all." "Oh, but that was where his greatest artfulness came in, the subtlety of the whole thing. The black bag was weighed at Gaunt's, and its weight registered. It was necessary to have a corresponding weight to it when it arrived in London. That's why he carried those heavy books and used the other bag for them. Then he and the guard knew perfectly well that detectives are pretty sharp in these matters, and if it had been noticed that he started back with 2 bags and only 1 arrived, especially as he was doing this more than once, suspicion would have been aroused. That's why the other bag was not thrown out. The whole thing was beautifully planned. Now we'll pack up. Stop, though. I want 3 or 4 more of those cigars." "That's right."
He packed up the cigars and directed them to H.M. Customs. "There," he said, "we'll send it anonymously. I expect, after his little visit to Pinkney's Common Crossing, Master Crane will take a holiday. I must really thank you, Brett, for having given me an interesting little problem. I don't think we need take any further action. The 3 of them will have quite fright enough to stop them. Good night." Hazel was right. Peter Crane suddenly disappeared from view, and the tobacco window was devoted to confectionery again. Harry Brett's prospects so increased with the return of custom that he made a formal proposal for the partnership, which was duly accepted, and the deed signed in the vestry of the parish church. Some weeks after the incident, Thorpe Hazel was on the platform of the London terminus of the Mid-Southern and Eastern Railway, watching the incoming of the Continental Express.
As soon as the bustle was over, he strolled up to the rear guard, who was standing by his van. "Have a cigar, guard," he said, offering his case. "Thank you, sir." "Take 3 or 4. They are more yours than mine." "What, sir?" "I believe you dropped them out of your van some weeks ago, just by Pinkney's Common Crossing. Good night." He turned his head when he reached the end of the platform. There was Guard Crane, standing like a statue, gazing at him with a paler face than was caused by the electric light.